Hi everyone, welcome to my chaotic corner of the internet. It's been like 2 months since I made a video because I just haven't had time. I apologize in advance for how I look and how I sound because I'm still recovering from a cold and I didn't sleep a lot last night. So I was talking to my oldest and bestest friend Sarah recently. She's probably watching this. If you are, what's up Sarah? We were talking about like my stan era. Some of you know this already, but I am actually entering into my Katatonia stan era. I made a Facebook status about how I'm entering into my Katatonia stan era, and I was kind of reminiscing on like other stan eras that I've had. And Sarah was like, "Can you? Hey!" Leaf jumped up and opened the door. He just there he is, the boy himself. And I was able to trace back every stan era I've had since like the year 2000. Because pretty much every year it's been one artist or like one band or another that's kind of defined that year for me. And so I thought I would make this really long video where I'm going to talk about like every stan era I've ever had. I have a list right here. In the year 2000, that's like the first time that I can really remember having a favorite band. Like growing up, I listened to a lot of classic rock in preschool, and then I had like a boy band moment in elementary school like everyone else did. It was the 90s. The first real favorite band I remember having was definitely Savage Garden. And Savage Garden, when you think about it, they were a super weird pop group because like they were actually really unique and original. I think the name Savage Garden actually came from like an Anne Rice novel, so that's telling right there. They were really like one of the darker, weirder pop artists. Especially their first album is so wild. I love it so much. The self-titled one with like the half faces, incredible. Savage Garden was actually the first concert that I remember going to. I know I went to like this music festival a couple of times before that, but Savage Garden was like my first like individual concert that I went to. I remember getting tickets for either like my birthday or Christmas or something that year, and I was like stoked. I actually still own the t-shirt that I bought then. That was like the first ever band tee that I bought. In my band shirts video, I'd actually shown that, so yeah, no, I don't wear it very often because I don't want it to like disintegrate, but I've had that band tee since the year 2000. And getting into Savage Garden was pretty important. In 2001, that was my Nickelback stan year. And I know you're probably thinking like, what? Listen, Nickelback's first couple of albums were legitimately really good. I still stand behind them. I remember hearing How You Remind Me on the pop station and being like, this is wild, these guys are playing actual instruments, you know? Like, it was one of the first rock songs I'd heard in a long time, and it really gripped me. Nickelback's first album, The State, I think that's their first album, was legitimately really good. It was just like a bunch of songs about growing up poor in Canada. I know people hate on Nickelback now, and you should. Like, they've definitely gotten worse. They've sold out over the years. At the same time, I think I should give Nickelback credit where credit is due, just for having kind of pointed me in a different direction. I remember that we moved from Southern California to Northern California. I think I was in 2002, and I remember that we were listening to Nickelback like the whole time. We had one of the first things we set up in the new house was a boombox to play Nickelback off of. My mom still fondly remembers the line, "Are we having fun yet?" from How You Remind Me, as just like being kind of, you know, that was the phrase. That was like the theme of the whole move, was like, are we having fun yet? No, we weren't. We were moving. It was terrible. So anyway, huge props to Nickelback for being with me in those trying times. And when we had moved into the place, when I was sitting in my little room with my little like clock radio, I remember scrolling through the stations trying to find Nickelback, and instead I heard the first riff of Toxicity by System of a Down. And you have to understand, like, I had just switched the channel, it had just started. It felt divine. Like, it felt like divine timing. It felt like I was supposed to hear this, and I was obsessed with it. And so 2002, I'm gonna say, was my System of a Down stan era. It was also a time that was just very tumultuous for me. We had just moved and I was kind of figuring out what identity I wanted to bring into my new life. I was trying to figure out like who I was gonna be in middle school. And according to legend, I turned to my mom and I said, I'm gonna wear all black and I'm not gonna talk to anyone. And that ended up being what happened because I realized I was goth. And I wasn't really allowed to be goth all the time back then, but like I started amassing more black clothing and I developed social anxiety. So I wasn't really talking much anyway. Getting into System of a Down during that time was like a huge part of my identity. It is something I still love. System of a Down is still very much part of like my consciousness. And I remember it being like a big part of my personality back then. I was like the person who liked System of a Down. And then in 7th grade, I met this guy who I had a huge crush on, and he had a CD player that was silver, and in black Sharpie he had just written the word Pantera on it. And I remember being like, well, now I gotta hear Pantera because this hot guy likes them. I was watching, I think it was Much Music or Fuse back then, I forget like where in the transition it was, but there's this, you know, music show on TV that had a metal program called Uranium, and looking back, I actually had a massive crush on Mistress Julia from Uranium. I just was in denial back then. I also just was trying to get into metal, you know. I remember I was listening to Uranium, and I remember hearing like that first riff of Walk by Pantera, and just being like, this is Pantera. Like something just intuitively, I was like, if anything is Pantera, it's this. And then like the little song name popped up, and sure enough, it was Walk by Pantera. So that ushered in my 2003 Pantera stan era, which is so fun to say. Now, if you go and look up Pantera, or if you know anything about Pantera, no, I don't support their politics. Pantera is kind of questionable at this stage. But back then, there wasn't really as much discourse about it. No one really said anything about the Confederate flag guitars. Everyone was kind of like, yeah, it's just about Southern heritage, Southern pride. Now, we don't do that. But back then I was like, okay, you know, Southern things aside, I don't really care about, like I lived in California. I didn't think about the South. I just really liked Pantera. So that was like 2003, I think. This is where in my history I have a bunch of question marks because I'm not actually sure like what happened. Also, there's something on this page, I have no idea what that is. Don't mind that. I know I also really liked AFI in middle school. And I know I got really into Opeth in high school. And I forget like in what order these things happened. So I'm gonna say that 2004 was my AFI stan era, because I remember like being obsessed with AFI, having an AFI poster. I used to visit the website davyonastick.com all the time. I don't know if y'all remember that, it was wild. It was like this fan site that was like low-key making fun of them, but like affectionately. And I was obsessed with Davy on the Stick. I honestly, like Davy Havoc back then, it was like the long hair and the makeup and like the lip piercing. He was gender identity goals before I knew what gender identity goals were. So definitely, I think it was 2004, was my AFI stan era. And again, like AFI, I credit them with like making me more goth, giving me an aesthetic to aspire to. I really appreciate them for that. But I also remember that in high school, I think it was like 2005, I was really into Opeth. I don't even know how I found them, but like somehow I just ended up listening to Opeth. And I remember that I had this like binder that had the Opeth logo on both sides, just so that like no matter what side it was on, everyone knew I liked Opeth. I vividly remember listening to the Deliverance CD in my CD player like during PE. Like I really liked Opeth. And then there was also a year, I want to say it was like 2006, that I really liked Emperor. Emperor is one of the like defining black metal bands. I still really like them even though they are kind of problematic or whatever. My prized possession was this like Emperor in the Nightside Eclipse t-shirt that I owned. And the only reason I really wanted that shirt, I guess I liked Emperor, but also one time I had gone to the mall and there was this really hot guy in the FYE, if y'all remember the record store. there was this really hot guy there who was wearing the Emperor and the Night Side Eclipse shirt. And I don't even think I talked to him. I think I just like looked at him from afar and was like, that's the hottest guy I've ever seen in my life. You know, he had like long hair, he had like dark hair, and he was like wearing his like Emperor and Night Side Eclipse shirt. And I was like, but it was a long sleeve. It had like Emperor all the way down the sleeves. I remember being fascinated. I was like, oh my god, I need to like get into Emperor. And I did. Like, this is the second time that a hot guy has led me to discover a band, except this time it was actually a good band. So yeah, never talked to Emperor guy, but he made a huge impression on me, and I hope he's doing well. In 2006, I moved here to Georgia from California, and I remember wearing my Emperor shirt under my Opeth hoodie because it was like October. And I really, like, no matter what happened to the weather, I wanted everyone to know what I was about on my first day. And it worked out because, like, I came into school wearing my Opeth hoodie. At some point during the day, I took it off and I was walking through the lunchroom, and this kid saw me and was like, hey, I have the poster of that shirt. And I was like, can I sit with you? And he was like, yeah. And that's like how I ended up making friends my first day of school, because I was wearing my fucking Emperor shirt, which is why I'm such like a pro band tee kind of person, because like it lets people know what you're about. You don't have to wonder. And you automatically have something to talk about. Like if you're wearing something that has an interest of yours on it, like, oh my god, if I were to leave my house right now and somebody would be like, whoa, you like Katatonia? I'd marry them. 2007 is a big blank. I do know there was one year, as an honorable mention, there was a year when I got really into the rapper The Game for some reason. That's a long story, but I think that was probably around then too. I think that was like 2007. And that brings us to 2008. 2008, I had just started college, and I vividly remember that my top two artists, I'm gonna mention them both at the same time because they go hand in hand for me. My freshman year, like my first semester of college in 2008, the only artists I really listened to were Hypocrisy and Lil Wayne. Hypocrisy, the like Swedish death metal band, and Lil Wayne, the rapper. I don't know why. That was just a phase I was in. I would even like combine their songs in my head sometimes and think of like ways that they could combine, which like they're surprisingly cohesive. They both talk about aliens. And I remember listening to whatever album it is that Drain came off of by Hypocrisy, and I wrote like a whole story kind of around it. Like I was really into Hypocrisy. I still like Hypocrisy, but like I was really into Hypocrisy in like 2008. I forgot to mention that the only reason I got into Lil Wayne is that like this kid who I used to talk to was like, hey, have you heard Lil Wayne? He's the best rapper alive. And I was like, ooh, I need to check this out. You know, that's a big endorsement. And turns out the only reason that anyone said Lil Wayne was the best rapper alive is because he said he was the best rapper alive. And for years, everyone was in a chokehold. And everyone sincerely believed that Lil Wayne was the best rapper alive just because he like declared it. So weird times. In this section I have a bunch of scribbles again. I don't know what I was into in 2009 and 2010, but I am going to claim 2011 as my Tiamat stan era. I still love Tiamat. You know, they really got me into that like gothic and doom metal kind of thing. And I had this like really distinct memory of like campus getting evacuated for some reason. It was like due to inclement weather. It was raining a lot. It was flooding actually. And so they like kicked us all off campus. They're like, go home before it floods or whatever, which doesn't make any sense, but you know. So they sent us home. I had just bought like a bunch of Tiamat CDs, and I was just like listening to their whole discography. And I remember it was raining out, and I was listening to the Deeper Kind of Slumber album, which is like now my go-to rainy day album. I'm not like a big album guy, but I am a Deeper Kind of Slumber guy. And I think that was the same year that I used to put on a Deeper Kind of Slumber every night before I went to bed, because I was trying to Pavlov myself into going to sleep. I've always had issues sleeping and staying asleep. And so I remember putting on a Deeper Kind of Slumber every single night, trying to put myself to sleep. Didn't work, but you know, I made an effort. I still love Tiamat. I actually had a big Tiamat resurgence like last year. I love them so much. I think 2012 was when I had my weird classical music phase, and my favorite composer was Felix Mendelssohn. So I'm gonna say that 2012 was my Felix Mendelssohn stan year. 2013 was a little bit of a void. And actually, I might have my years off in this section, because 2011 might have been my Mendelssohn year. I don't know. Anyway, I don't know what happened in 2013. 2014, I remember getting really into industrial. And 2014, especially my favorite artist of that year was Hocico. Say what you will about Hocico, they have a lot of violent content, they have a lot of questionable stuff in their back catalog, but they've been continuously making some of the most aggressively danceable agrotech that I've ever heard. And I love agrotech, I know. And I just got out of a relationship with a guy who like did not like industrial. He was into black metal, and that actually kind of ruined black metal for me for a long time because like I associated it with him and we didn't have a very good breakup, and that's an understatement. It was really bad. It was a bad time, and kind of in an act of revenge, I started listening to a bunch of industrial. He especially hated KMFDM, and I remember like the day after we broke up, I went and listened to KMFDM on repeat. And I remember also that I was on Tumblr a lot, and I used to have just like a bunch of Hocico songs on my Tumblr page. 2015 was my AJJ stan year. Yes, I had a folk punk phase. Crazy. I don't know who I was. I don't recognize that person. But yes, 2015 was the year that I was cheated on and broken up with on my birthday. And the person who did that had gotten me into AJJ. She used to play Love in the Time of Human Papillomavirus on guitar and sing it to me all the time, and so like when we broke up, like I don't know why, but I decided I was just gonna listen to that song on repeat and cry. And surprisingly, that actually was like the gateway into me getting really into them. Like you would think it would be like a traumatic memory, but actually it became kind of nostalgic. This song got me through some hard times. 2016, I have Vampire ? Weekend ? 2016, like 2014 through 2018, 2019 were super weird years for me, and I think 2016 was my Vampire Weekend stan era. A lot happened in 2016, I was really chaotic that year, and I remember going to a bar and requesting a bunch of Vampire Weekend songs and dancing around to it. Like I was, believe it or not, your boy, had a big Vampire Weekend year in 2016. 2017, I had Tame Impala / Washed Out. I'm not sure which one I liked more. I think it was Tame Impala that I liked more, but it was also the year that I saw Washed Out in concert. I was seeing a guy, and he and I are still on good terms, we're fine, and like we both listened to a lot of like Washed Out together, and we saw them in concert together. But I also listened to a lot of Tame Impala, and that started in 2016. There was a while where like The Less I Know the Better was just the soundtrack to everything that was going on. But that year, yeah, I was really into like all that like indie stuff. It was super weird. 2018, my Miguel stan era. Oh my god. The singer Miguel. I don't even know like what song you would know him from. I just remember that like I was listening to the radio and Come Through and Chill came on, and I was like, ooh, who is this? I need to listen to this more. He's also beautiful. He's like one of the most attractive people I've ever seen in my life. So, and he's like extremely talented. He plays guitar, he sings. I still like Miguel. I still like a couple times a year I'll go listen to Miguel for like nostalgia. 2019, I have like 4 artists in the running because I forget which one I liked the most. Which is weird because that's like so recent. I know I listened to a lot of Sonic Death that year, which is a bit of a weird one. They're like a Russian punk band. I also listened to a lot of Lizzo that year because Lizzo I think had like just come out that year. Like everybody was obsessed with Lizzo in 2019. And I was always out of the house in 2019. I was working, I was going to the gym, I was always out with friends and stuff. And so the outside world was really influencing like what I was listening to. And like Lizzo was just so empowering. She was like such a force. I remember going to karaoke, like one person was singing Truth Hurts and everybody was singing along with it. And like one of my friends was like, what the fuck, what is this? Why do you all know this? But there was one artist that I actually think 2019 was the year of for me, and it was Denzel Curry. I was obsessed with Denzel Curry in 2019. I still really like him. It started because I was watching old Vines, and you know, a lot of old Vines had this song Ultimate in them. It was kind of a meme back then. And so I actually like went and found the song and listened to it and really liked it. And then I just like, Denzel Curry is a rapper, absolutely, but especially some of his like stuff from around that time is actually pretty metal. It's actually pretty like, I mean, he literally has a song called Black Metal Terrorist. Denzel Curry is great, okay? But 2019, like I remember I was going to the gym and I was listening to Denzel Curry at the gym, and that was what I did. I also got really into death grips that year, so I also have death grips on here, but I think if I had to choose like one definitive stand era for 2019, it was Denzel Curry, but it is a bit of a toss-up. 2020. Now we're getting into like what I refer to as the present day, because the last 4 years have seemed just completely to like run into each other. But 2020 was the year that I decided I was gonna get back into metal. However, my top artist for that year, and really the artist I think defined that year, was Eskorbuto, which is like a Spanish punk band that I really like. I started learning how to play guitar again because I've been playing guitar on and off my whole life, ever since I was like 16. In 2020, I listened to the song Historia Triste by Eskorbuto so much that I was like, I'm pretty sure I can play this on guitar. And I did. I found the tab, it was the easiest song in the world, it's 4 chords, they're all power chords. And that was like really inspiring, because I was like, if I can learn this in like a day, I can learn, you know, not anything, but it just, I feel like in the past I've kind of tried to push myself really hard with my guitar playing and like kind of tried to like go beyond my limits way too fast. Starting with the most simple 4-chord punk song in existence made me realize that playing guitar doesn't have to be hard, it doesn't have to be complicated, and it can still sound good even if it's really easy to play. Also, like, you know, the world was like ending all around us, and Historia Triste got me through that. Like, it's a really good song. I just got really like wrapped up in like Eskorbuto mythos. There's a lot to it. They got arrested a lot and stuff. I don't know, I found it really interesting. Like, the band still exists. Like, they're still putting out new Eskorbuto songs, but to me it's just not the same. Anything after the 90s is just like not the same. 2020, big Eskorbuto year, but I do want to give an honorable mention to Ghost, because I know that Ghost is kind of like hard rock, really. They're not even really that metal, but they still kind of got me back into metal. 2021, big fucking year. 2021 is the year of the band whose name I've tried really hard to pronounce multiple times and I'm still probably getting it wrong. I think it's like Morteminence. I got really into black metal in 2021, and I found this band and they were incredible, and I literally had my Twitter display name set to Morteminence Stan account. And I ended up meeting like kind of the central figure of that project, and they're now one of my good friends. I don't know if Charlize is watching this, but what's up? 2021 was like a massive year for me because I was like talking to one of my favorite musicians at that time. Like, I've never done that before. I'd never had like such a direct line to somebody who I really admired. They only had like 12 songs, and they were still like my top artists of the year. And I have no idea how that even happened. It's just like I was just that obsessed with them for like such a long period of time. Now, although we won't be getting really any new Morteminence material probably ever, you should also check out Mutiara Damansara, because they're incredible, and that's Charlize's other band, the one that they've been working. They have like so much going on. They have so many projects. But that's like kind of the big one right now, and you should really check them out. They're really good. If you like black gaze, you might like it. And I'm not just saying that because I'm biased. Like, I'm not just saying that because that's my friend now. Like, seriously, Mutiara Damansara is good stuff. 2022 has been my Unto Others stan year, as all of you know, probably, because like I made a whole video about it. I'm gonna just link that video in the description so you understand how important Unto Others is to me, but basically, like, they're this amazing gothic rock metal band. Like, they're, I don't know, they have like some touches of like classic rock, they have some touches of gothic metal, they have some, like, some people even describe them as doom metal, but I don't hear that at all. Like, they're way too like fast-paced to be doom metal, but anyway. Unto Others is great. I love them thematically, I love them aesthetically, I love the way they sound, and I saw them live this year and it was a treat. And the reason why I'm making this video is to announce to everyone that I am entering into my Katatonia stan era. I saw Katatonia live a few weeks ago with my dad. Everyone in that audience was so nice. I was waiting in the merch line and like there was a path from like the door to enter the place to the stage that was like right in front of me. Everyone who walked past me said, "Excuse me." I've never been to a show where that happened. And everyone was there from somewhere else. Like, we were talking to people from like Tennessee. I ended up meeting this guy there who was really cool, and he's like from like New Orleans. And he like traveled here to see Katatonia. And he's been seeing them since like I don't even know how old he was, because he apparently saw them play basement shows back in the day. He still had like the enthusiasm of like a much younger person. I have no idea how old this guy was. He was just like this ageless being who lived for Katatonia. And like he and I had gone up to the front of the stage. Like we were like in the 4th row, and we were talking to these people who, like, it was like 2 couples who were taking pictures of each other, and we were talking to those couples, and the guy in one of the couples was talking to us, and he was like, "Yeah, my girlfriend's name is Kate, and I made her a playlist called Katatonia." And I was like, "Oh, that's so cute." And they had traveled from like somewhere else also. Like, going into it, I really liked them. They were actually already my #1 artist on Spotify of all time when I went in there. But going into it, I was like, oh, I really only like the stuff from the 90s. Discouraged Ones is my favorite album. I hope they play something from the 90s. Of course they didn't. Like, they have like they have so much other stuff. I don't think they really play stuff from the 90s anymore. But like, when I was there, when I was in it, the enthusiasm of other people rubbed off on me to the point where I was like, I'm going to become a Katatonia stan. Katatonia fans are the nicest people in existence. And that's why I made the executive decision. I mean, like, yes, I also love Katatonia. But it's because the fans are like just so devoted to them. I'm like, I want to be part of this. And I'm usually such a hipster. I'm usually like, I hate hype. I hate being part of anything. American by birth, Katatonia stan by choice. Entering my Katatonia stan era in 2023, you know, who knows what's gonna happen, but I feel like no matter what happens, Katatonia will be there with me. And yeah, that's the end of the stan eras video. Let me know in the comments, do you have stan eras? Do you have like bands that you only liked for like a year and then you forgot about? Because like going through this whole list has been a trip. And I think it really says a lot about how my music taste has evolved, and you know, it's just fun to look back on things like that. If you remember my like salt lamp confessional series, whatever I called it, I got rid of all those videos. I did make a video talking about like the evolution of my music taste, but I feel like this is like hopefully gonna be more entertaining. I don't know. Anyway, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I hope I go less than 2 months before making another video. I'll see you lovely humans next time.